Well, good morning. True to the title for the day, A Day of Inspiration, we've heard some very inspirational topics this morning about having a sense of purpose, having truth in communication, integrity in government, and now I'm here to talk to you about money. That might seem a little commercial in terms of a segue, but I like the thought of Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which you may have read, who said, "No margin, no mission." So having a margin is essential to all of these other things we've been talking about today. And I've got a message for you this morning that hopefully will be just as transformational as some of these other very important topics we've been talking about. I'd like to start with a true story. One Sunday morning, a small digital agency gets a phone call from a prospective client. It's an online retailer who's convinced they need a new website. They said, "We're being outsold about 3-to-1 by our direct competitors, and we have no idea what the problem is. We have a good product lineup, we have good customer service, we have good pricing, we have good selection. It's got to be the website. Can you come over and talk to us about how you could spend our $1 million budget and develop a new website?" So that's a pretty attractive offer. The agency goes over for a quick briefing. They come back to their office. They pull up the website and go through a shopping experience, fill up a cart, and do kind of a mystery shopping tour of the website. And before the afternoon was over, they called this prospective client back and they said, "We don't think you need a new website." Wow, that's pretty good news to someone prepared to spend $1 million. They said, "You know, when you fill up your shopping cart and you're ready to make the purchase, there's a registration button. And today, a lot of consumers don't really want to register with your company. They really just want to give you their credit card, make the purchase, and be done with it. So we think on that registration button, if you just add 3 words, 'skip this step,' we think that might solve your problem." So they added the 3 words, and a year later, produced an extra $300 million in online sales. So I have 2 questions for you this morning. First, what should that agency put on their timesheet? And the second, more important question, what was that agency really selling? What is it that we really sell is the essential question that I'd like to have you think about this morning. Michael Farmer took you through the history of what's happened in our business yesterday. Mike and I often present in forums like this, and he may have given you the statistic, but if we turn the clock all the way back to the days of Mad Men, because I know you've all watched Don Draper, to the 1960s, what was the average agency profit margin in the 1960s? Anyone know? 40%. Yep, 30%. So that's kind of without trying. That's an average year. If you had a really great year, it could be 40 or 50%. If we fast forward to today, to 2018, that figure is pretty dismal. It might have already been quoted during this conference. We're now just below 10%. And if you go over the decades and plot this, as no doubt Mike Farmer probably did, this is not headed in a good direction. I think we could say it's economically unsustainable. And if we think that working harder at the current system is the solution, like just being more accurate on timesheets, getting people to turn their timesheets in more often, beating people up who don't turn in their timesheets, all of those things are not going to save us, because we've been trying pretty hard at that for a long, long time. It calls for more disruptive change than that in terms of our approach to pricing and remuneration. I'd like to share a quick video that I think underscores a lot of the problems that we experience from day to day, seen through the eyes of other industries.
Hi. I have your request for proposal.
Request for proposal? What the hell is this?
So here's the RFP. I'm going through this strategic process, right, where I'm going to pick my personal trainer. You give me the designs on spec, and then we'll see how I like the finished product, and maybe I'll pay for the build. Doesn't that sound good?
Sounds completely ass backwards.
I don't have $1.75 in my budget right now just to try one coffee willy-nilly to see if I like it or not. That's why I would like a spec one.
No.
You guys can make me a spec breakfast, right? And then if I enjoy it, I'll make you guys my ROR, my restaurant of record.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, and then I come back
don't pull my leg. Come on, get out of my place. Come on. I'm busy.
So you don't do spec frames?
Not at all, no.
Okay, and then how do you get clients?
Customers trust me and they like the quality of work I do.
I definitely want you as a client, but I'm gonna start providing my services day one, so you've gotta start paying day one. That's just how businesses work.
What if you were just my client like right now and you were paying for your coffee?
How am I gonna know if I like the coffee if I don't get to try it
You just gotta
first?
trust.
Be like everybody else do, you know what I mean? First you pay, then you eat.
If I do like the frames, then I will buy more frames off you for a year, but that will come with a fee reduction. And then maybe the next year after that, another fee reduction of another 20% off. But I will be giving you business. I will own all the rights to all the different training methods we've gone through.
I'm gonna teach you how to do stuff,
Right.
and then you own my intellectual property.
Exactly.
Absolutely not ever would I do that. Who would ever agree to that?
Okay, so I'm noticing that our chemistry is not really jiving right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess no.
You work for the government, don't you? What's the matter with you, man?
I have other restaurants that will do it for free,
Don't
and I want
go for it. Get out of here. Come on. Go for it. Why you come here? Move your ass out from here. Come on.
Do you do what you do for free?
no.
So why do you want me to?
Yeah, that's pretty scary when we look at it from the perspective of other industries and how ridiculous that would be. So how did we get ourselves into this back-footed situation where we now find ourselves lined up against these very aggressive professional buyers who insist on things like ownership of intellectual property and us giving away our most valuable product? We do in fact have, as clients, professional buyers. Many of you have to deal with procurement. This is becoming more and more common, even in smaller and smaller pitches. And procurement people are very well trained, they're very well educated, they are certified, they have initials behind their names, they go to conferences, they attend ProcureCon. It's a thing, if you've been to ProcureCon. They study pretty hard to do what they do, and so when they walk into a room, they're pretty serious. They're pretty serious, well-armed negotiators, and then we walk in. Because most of us have spent our careers studying our craft, haven't we? Studying our profession. But we haven't studied pricing. I often ask groups like this, how many of you have ever read a book on pricing? And usually not a single hand goes up. And so it's kind of an unfair fight, isn't it? The professional seller against, the professional buyer against the amateur seller. So how can we arm ourselves better so that we can achieve our margins and therefore our mission? The truth is there has been over the last 20 years a pricing revolution, a global pricing revolution. It's kind of passed us by in professional services, and by the way, we're not alone in what I'm about to talk about today. It's all other professional service firms, law firms, accounting, architectural firms, IT consulting firms. But this pricing revolution has happened everywhere else at all your client organizations, and it has resulted in a veritable explosion of creativity in pricing, innovation in the way your clients price their products and services, and has produced a whole series of really interesting books. I hope that by the time I'm finished, I can persuade you to at least read one pricing book and maybe more. The ones I have on screen, the one titled Priceless by William Poundstone actually made the New York Times bestseller list. It's all about pricing psychology, the kinds of behavioral economics that many of you study and use inside your agencies on behalf of your clients. Let me give you some examples of this pricing revolution in action. Disney, most of you probably, many have been to a Disney theme park sometime in your life. And when you visited the park, you probably paid a standard price, the way Disney priced for many, many years. If you go to a Disney theme park now, today, you'll notice that there is now a digital reader board, and the price of admission is constantly changing. If you come back a few hours later, the price will be a little different than at the time you arrive at the park. So this is called dynamic pricing. And I'll bet you can think of some other businesses that use dynamic pricing. If you flew to London for this event, then you were subject to dynamic pricing. The airlines actually invented it. It was adopted later by the hotels. And now we see it in a chain of cinemas in Australia, parking meters in Louisiana and San Francisco, for food that is reaching its expiration date on grocery shelves. Pretty interesting. And of course, sports teams who now can fill every seat in the stadium just like airlines are able to fill every seat on an airplane using dynamic pricing. Another example, congestion pricing. This we experience as consumers of electricity during peak demand, especially in the summer when everyone's running their air conditioning. Price goes up. The city of Stockholm, city of London have congestion pricing to limit traffic inside the cities with tolls and so forth. Uber, famous for its surge pricing, but Uber actually also knows if your battery is about to die. Did you know that? That's a little extra evil, or brilliant. Brilliant, probably brilliant. Two-part pricing. This one will be familiar. It's well over 100 years old, invented by King Gillette and the original safety razor. His idea was to sell the actual razor as an inexpensive product, but then the blades, charge a premium for the blades. We experience this when we buy the HP printer for 99 pounds, and then each cartridge is 400 pounds. Same with the Nespresso machine. So I'm going to share a lot more pricing techniques here coming up. But as I do, I'd like to invite you to think: could some of these techniques apply in professional services, in what we do? Could we use two-part pricing? Could we use pay now, use later? We do this all the time when we buy credits on a service like iStock. We pay for them now, but it might take us an entire year to actually use them. If you've filled up your Starbucks app with $50, then you might spend that $50 over the next 6 months or 2 weeks, in my case, of drinking coffee at Starbucks. Usage-based pricing, this is how software companies now charge. You remember when software used to come in a shrink-wrap box with a price and a CD inside? So now we pay to use the software, don't we? We subscribe. You can now subscribe to a Cadillac. That's an interesting concept. So part of this is language. It's not buy, it's not lease, it's not rent, it's subscribe. And Michelin, their commercial tire division, so this is a piece of rubber being creatively priced, not a fixed price for the tire. Michelin charges for miles driven, So that's usage-based pricing applied even to a piece of B2B equipment. So we now see this pricing revolution starting to take hold in professional services and agencies in particular. This is a British firm, brain juicer, that makes an ROI pledge to every single client. This isn't to say that they guarantee certain marketing results necessarily, but some kind of a guaranteed ROI if you hire and work with this firm. This is BGO, also London-based, and you can see here we favor innovative win-wins with clients over the dubious, fraudulent math of billable hours or the murky commissions of programmatic buying. So these are examples of innovation of pricing in agencies, and I'm going to share quite a few more examples. The essential problem we have in our business is that we confuse these two terms. We confuse cost with price. We conflate these ideas. Because if you think about how our pricing is determined, it's not really pricing at all, is it? It's looking at the product or service or the campaign, the program to be developed. We walk around and estimate the number of hours that are going to be spent on the assignment based on an hourly rate, and then that becomes our price. Well, is that pricing? No, it's not really pricing. That's just costing. That's just adding up what something will cost us. The rest of the business world does it the exact opposite direction. They determine the price before they determine the cost. If you look up the word cost in the dictionary, this is easy. Most of us would know what this is. It's just a monetary calculation. You can do it on a calculator, on a spreadsheet. And it's a tactical kind of exercise. Many people in agencies are good at costing. Project managers, production people, account people, finance, certainly good at costing. But pricing, setting a price, determining a price, that's quite different. What would be a good definition of price? I like this. This is my all-time favorite, what a buyer is willing to pay. If you want a good definition of price or even value. And unlike costing, pricing is a judgment. You could say costing is a science, pricing is an art. Pricing is strategic. Pricing is an important strategic function inside organizations, or at least should be. In your client organizations, finance and pricing are two separate departments. They're two separate functions. There is a CFO and a CPO, Chief Pricing Officer. Organizations like Federal Express, FedEx have 250 people with pricing titles. So where are the pricing titles in agencies? We don't have them. But I'm here to advocate for that very thing, to make pricing, not costing, a core competency inside our organizations, just like it exists inside our clients. So this morning I'd like to share with you 3 ways that I think are quite practical and actionable that you could start using actually this afternoon to help start transforming your pricing. The foundation of this change really is first to change our paradigm, to change our mind about what we're really selling. And if I were to ask for a raise of hands, how many here think we're selling time? I don't think many hands would go up, because I think deep down inside we know we don't really sell time. We bill time, don't we? We bill for time in some form. But is that really what we're selling? And wouldn't it be interesting if we could bill for what we really sell, if it's not time? So that's the paradigm shift we've got to make. That leads ultimately to behavior change, but there's a piece in between that the behavioral psychologists say is essential, a precursor to behavior change, and that is our language. First thing we have to do is change our language, because we use the language of cost in our firms. We don't use the language of value. And the power of language is incredibly important. I love this quote from Werner Erhard, who says, all transformations are linguistic. Indeed, all revolutions start with language. It's very important. So what are some of the bad words we use that we ought to eradicate from our lexicon? You want to throw some out, make this interactive? Time is, yep. What else? time. Scope of work eventually is, yeah, there's something that ought to precede that. Well, I'll add to the list here hours, rates, billable time, estimate. That's a word we can use internally. We shouldn't be using it with clients. Utilization, time of staff, FTEs, reconciliation, discounts, burn down rates, charge out rates. I mean, I could go on and on. Yeah, there's all sorts of really creative ways that we talk about time. So that's the language of cost. What's the language of value? We use, yeah, good. I'm glad to get this participation. Yeah, we use the cost word when we should be using the word price. Now, I don't know about you, but I've spent my career in the agency business, and I spent the first half of it never having used the word price. I used commission, retainer, fee, markup, synonyms, all for price. But I'm here to try and persuade you to use that very word, the word price, because it connotes exactly what we mean. It's not a cost, it's not an estimate, it's our price. Same with just the language of success and accountability and effectiveness. If you watch a really good salesperson next time you have this experience, the words they use, the language they use will be about the language of value. So every time if you have an internal document that says estimate, and we all do, or cost, or estimated cost, just go do a global search and replace on your file servers, replace that with the word price. That's what we really mean, is price. So the first idea that I'd like to share in terms of transforming our pricing is that we need to really just change what we are selling in the first place. If you think about our options for what we can sell, what we can charge for, at a very basic level, we can choose to charge for inputs. This is our hours, this is our effort, our time of staff, and indeed most firms still do charge for inputs, charge for effort. What else could we charge for if not inputs? Well, outputs, the actual work itself, the work product, the deliverable itself has intrinsically more value than the input, doesn't it? And so to move from inputs to outputs is a step in the right direction. At the apex of the pyramid are what clients actually buy in the first place, and what they really hire us for, and that's outcomes. Those are the results or the marketplace effects of what we do. So in this value pyramid, we've chosen to charge for the least valuable, easiest to calculate, which is a big reason why we do it, by the way, but the least valuable of these three options. Just give you an example from, kind of a strange example from Hollywood, the young Tom Hanks being cast in the role of Forrest Gump, if you saw the movie Forrest Gump. Kind of a crazy movie. And Tom was shown the script of this movie, which, I don't know, if I were Tom, I would think, I don't know, could this really be a movie? It's pretty crazy. But the producer offered Tom 3 different ways that he could be paid for his starring role. He could show up and be paid for time on set, that would be for inputs, or the producer would offer Tom a fixed fee of $20 million, not bad money, or, and this is what Tom actually went for, you may know how many stars now choose to work with on films, and that is a percent of box office. So if you have a percent of box office, you have pretty strong incentive to show up and deliver a stellar performance, don't you? That's alignment of economic incentives. And when our business moved to the hourly rate system, which, by the way, happened in the 1980s, so some of you have been in this business longer than that, but a lot of young people don't know anything else. They assume it's always been this way, and it hasn't. We decided to introduce the hourly rate ourselves When we did that, we basically unhooked this alignment of economic incentives, because what clients want, which is fewer hours, is the opposite of what we want, more hours. That's misalignment, isn't it? So when we sell time, that's just a unit of cost. That's a unit, really a unit of our cost, isn't it? And when you think about it, what reasonable buyer would want to buy our cost? It's kind of an interesting concept. Why, we'd like to sell you our costs. No, I don't think I want to buy your costs. I would prefer to buy something that those inputs actually create, so outputs are a step in the right direction. And we could put up here a big long list of outputs depending on your business model. But it's not just an ad or a campaign. It can be a recommendation, it can be a plan, it can be a report. Any piece of IP or thinking qualifies as an output, doesn't it? Or we could choose to sell outcomes. And again, depending on your business model, there are lots of different outcomes or results that you produce on behalf of your clients. But here's where we get sweaty palms. To think, well, let's see, for us to tie our compensation to outcomes is problematic. We don't have complete control over the outcomes. We're one of 8 agencies for this client. So there are lots of things, lots of reasons, a lot of red flags we have in the back of our minds that go up. But for the right kind of client, in the right situation, an outcome-based agreement can be a very smart way to go. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't have a steady diet of it, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But looking at the kinds of results we produce for our clients, they can be categorized in lots of different ways. We help our clients produce business-related outcomes. These are the market share and average price per sale, things like that. Marketing-related outcomes where we're particularly strong. This is store traffic and page views and so forth. Customer-related outcomes, so these are more attitudinal. This is brand preference, brand awareness, brand fame. Channel-related, especially if you work in the B2B sector, or even internal outcomes inside the client organizations, helping build the brand from the inside out. So there are lots of different models that we can use to have a little clearer view of the types of outcomes we produce. Problem is, would you agree we're way too prone to jump straight into that scope of work and not step back and have the discussion and the conversation about what is it we're trying to achieve? What are the objectives? What are the expectations? What outcomes are you trying to produce? And that's at least half of the problem, is that we don't step back and have that conversation with our clients. I call that scope of value before scope of work. We should discuss scope of value before scope of work. As my colleague Ron Baker says, clients don't care about the labor pains, they just want to see the baby. And we're all about the labor pains. It's going to take us this long, this many people, this many hours. What is that? That's just labor pains. That's not what the client is actually buying. That's our internal process. But we've made them care about it because we've taught them that that's how we want to be paid. And so the fact that they play this back to us and crack the whip in ever obnoxious ways on this topic is of our own doing, because we chose to adopt the hourly fee system. It wasn't imposed on us. When clients ask you to fill in that obnoxious template with your hourly rates, that's our system that they're playing back to us. They didn't invent it. They're just fine-tuning it and taking this question of transparency in the wrong direction. What is the inventory of a professional service firm? If you think about your client organizations, that's an easier thing to think about, because many of them have warehouses and they can walk down and pull out the bins and fill orders with their inventory. But what is the inventory of an agency? What's in our warehouse? If I just popped in from outer space and looked at an invoice from an agency, I would conclude, here's a company that sells hours. How interesting. They sell time. So is our warehouse full of hours? Is that what is in the bins? And we go through, we pull out all the hours, and when they're gone, they're gone? I mean, actually, that's kind of true, isn't it? You've got so many people with so many billable hours possible in a year, and when that inventory is gone, it's gone. Unless, of course, you want to work your people to death, which most of us often do. So what's a better answer? What is our inventory? What was that? Talent. Talent? That's a good answer. You didn't know I was going to make you work, did you? Other thoughts? Ideas. That's a good answer too. Yeah, yes, and I think that ladders up to what's in our warehouse. We have a warehouse full of intellectual capital. That's what's in our warehouse. And there's an inexhaustible supply of that. It's not finite. It's not anything. Intellectual capital cannot be contained in a unit of time, can it? It's the wrong container. We've chosen a really strange container for what it is we really sell and the value we offer to our clients. I'd like to share with you a quick video from one of the principals of the well-regarded design firm Pentagram in New York, who is relating her experience of designing brand identity for a pretty notable organization.
I operate very strongly with my instincts, and I really either if I don't get it in the first crack, I get it in the second. And if I don't get it in the second, I almost never get it, because as I said, it's very intuitive kind of process for me. I've never been a refiner. My best work are kind of big, bold strokes that came very quickly. And it's problematic because a lot of clients like to buy process, and I think they're not getting their money's worth, like I solved it too fast. I mean, Michael Beirut told me to shut up in an initial meeting. I drew the Citibank logo, after we had the first meeting, I drew it on a napkin, walked out. They had to merge Travelers and Citi, and Travelers had an umbrella, and Citibank is a word, in the lowercase thing of a T is an umbrella. You stick an arc on the top and you got it. I mean, it didn't take, it's a second. It's all over the world. Like, how can it be that you talk to somebody and it's done in a second? But it is done in a second. It's done in a second in 34 years. It's done in a second, and every experience and every movie and everything of my life that's in my head.
I love that idea. It's done in a second and 34 years. That's what we sell, isn't it? We sell expertise. Irrespective of what the time it took her to take out a marker during the actual client meeting on a napkin and design this logo. Is that what Paula Scheer should be selling? No, it's her expertise. It's her 34 years in the school of hard knocks, in learning what works and what doesn't. She's bringing her expertise to the party. And so we're not selling, or shouldn't be selling, the process of getting to the solution. We should be selling the solution, the value of the solution itself. And if we can't price that by the hour, can we? That's a non sequitur. It doesn't add up. So when we're able to change our paradigm of what we really sell, then it allows us to have very different conversations with our clients. I'd like to play back a conversation between Jason DeLand, one of the co-founders of Anomaly, and a client. Anomaly, if you know this agency, is quite different in terms of how they work. They started from the beginning not ever believing in the idea of selling time. They don't do timesheets. They don't charge clients by the hour. They have all sorts of very innovative ways that they price their services, and it's resulted in a remarkably successful agency. They were the U.S. Ad Age Agency of the Year last year. And they run a very profitable business. So here's Jason talking to a client. Client says, I want to hire you for your expertise and your ability to create and execute transformational ideas for my company. Jason says, excellent, we're ideal for that challenge. Yes, but before I hire you, I have a few important questions. Okay, shoot, what do you mean? Well, what will you charge me? Jason says, $1 million for our ability to work with your organization to create the idea, and then if we move it forward, another $1 million, because truly transformational business ideas are valuable and in limited supply. Is the client going to say, great, where do I sign? No. Why $1 million? Well, what do you mean? Well, if I understand how you arrived at it, then I can negotiate it down. Jason, but I don't want you to negotiate it down. That's money out of my pocket. Client, yes, but it's a privilege to work on my brand and you get lots more business from it. You heard that one? Jason, I will. Can you guarantee that? No, but I still need to know how you got to your price. Now I want you to, I know this sounds completely normal, but it's not normal for a buyer to ask a seller, how did you get to your price? When's the last time you asked that question? You walk into an Apple store and, hey, I really am interested in this new iPhone, but I'm just wondering, how many hours did it take to build it? It's not normal, guys. It feels normal to us, but it's not done in other sectors, in other markets, and in other businesses. We've allowed it. We've allowed our clients to ask this question. And so Jason, who's got the right paradigm, has a pretty good answer. He says, well, okay, I looked at the size and scope of the opportunity and considered the value of us addressing it for you and calculated a price I'm willing to do it for, a price that I believe to be competitive in the market and a price that affords me the peace of mind I can make a bit of money. Is this client going to be satisfied now? No. Oh, I need more than that. I need to know who will do the work and the amount of time it takes them to do it. See how well we've trained our clients? Just keep asking, keep asking. Jason says, the team I said will do the work. It will take as long as it takes until we have an outcome that everyone is happy with. That's a pretty good answer, don't you think? That's a really good answer. Well, the team that we've talked about will do the work, and they'll keep working until you're happy. How does that sound? What reasonable client wouldn't say, okay, great, yeah, that sounds pretty good. You'll keep working until I'm happy. But again, we've trained our clients to ask the wrong questions, so this client says yes, but what if just one person cracks it in one day? And then you execute it with a small team in 3 weeks, that's not worth $1 million. Jason says, you're 100% correct, it's worth more. If that happens, we'll double it. Because faster ought to cost more, not less. In the crazy Alice in Wonderland, upside-down world of agency pricing, you know, the faster we are, the less we earn. It doesn't make any economic sense when you think about speed to market should have value. So, second hack that I'd like to share with you is this idea of trading your rate card for a pricing stack. So you know the concept of a stack, technology stack, software stack. We could have the same kind of concept when it comes to how we get paid for our work. So next time you're asked for a rate card, could you give us your rate card? I would like to see you say something like, well, we used to have a rate card, but we no longer do because we have decided that we're no longer going to bill for our time. We don't really believe that's what we sell. So we won't be able to provide you with a rate card, but what we will provide is a pricing stack. We've got a variety of ways that we work with our clients. And once we have an opportunity to talk with you about your goals and objectives, we'll recommend several different ways that we could work together that we think are a better alignment of economic incentives. So let's look at some examples of these various elements of a pricing stack. And by the way, this could be a much longer list. You would have your own version of this. These are just kind of a prototype. Royalties. one of the early Bluetooth headsets, the Jawbone brand, was done by an agency that accepted just royalties on sales as its sole basis of remuneration. And that was a very profitable relationship, very simple. What about subscription-based? That one sounds problematic for professional services, but it's being done more and more. This is an example from a PR firm that sells a media relations program on subscription. I know other PR firms that sell social media community management programs on subscription. They offer several different versions of a subscription to the program. So part of this is language, part of this is paradigm shift, part of this is changing the conversation with the client, because notice you're not having a discussion about time and hours. Dynamic pricing, we talked about that a few minutes ago. How does that play out in the agency world? In the US, a large insurance client, Geico, which is a very large advertiser, and its agency, the Martin Agency, the agency gets paid dynamically based on number of leads. So the more leads that they produce on behalf of this insurance company, they move into higher and higher tiers of remuneration. Usage-based. Now this, I would imagine some of you are already doing, because many agencies already have some pieces of IP that would qualify for this. The example I have on the screen is from Geometry, who invented this device that you slide across a grocery cart handle that will sanitize the handle. And Geometry wisely decided that they were going to retain ownership of the IP of this idea and of this product. And so they licensed it to Unilever for the Lifebuoy brand. It started in the Middle East, and now it's rolling out to other parts of the world. And this is basically money while you sleep. Your clients earn money while they sleep, right? They go home, they go to bed, they're earning money. We're not, because we're not putting hours on a timesheet. If you have these kinds of techniques as part of your portfolio, then you are earning money while you sleep. Usage, let's see. Another example of usage-based is a platform, a software platform that can be licensed for use by your clients. Equity. Some of you have maybe done this. This also can make us nervous, because if we take equity in the wrong company or the wrong startup, then that can be trouble. But again, if you have the attitude of test and learn, and you're not going to put all your eggs in the equity basket, it can actually be quite interesting and profitable. There's a firm featured in Fast Company in the US recently, Red Antler, who routinely takes equity stakes in the brands that they work on, like the very successful new mattress brand, Casper. Outcome-based, again, I would imagine many of you have had the experience of sometimes doing an outcome-based agreement, where you might have a performance-based component to what you're doing. So this isn't completely new. But what I'm talking about here isn't just a small, 5% upside downside bonus malus kind of a thing. I'm talking about maybe a deal where your entire agreement is based on outcomes. This example from a global agency working for a global hotel chain derived their compensation solely based on number of room nights booked. They received the monetary value for each room night booked. So is that dangerous? Well, not so dangerous. This is a big global brand, been around for 100 years. They have a pretty solid track record and a sales history that you can look at. So you're not really taking that much risk if you do your homework. And it's really great alignment of economic incentives. Output-based, so not outcomes, but output-based, meaning we're going to stop charging for inputs and instead charge for the actual work product. We're going to price the work product itself. And this is an example of the small agency of the year in the US, Greatest Common Factory. And you can see here, or maybe not read it, we stopped tracking hours and focused on the quality of the deliverable instead. So the idea of not the hours, but the deliverable. Project points is a particularly interesting idea and a relatively new phenomenon inspired by the Agile movement. Some of you may work in the Agile framework, but it's this idea that what we're going to do is take the assignments that we know are lined up for this client in the coming year, and we're going to categorize them, these assignments, in some way. I think this is a particularly interesting framework. The solve phase, which is the ideation, problem solving. Drive is making it happen with client service and project management, workflow management. And build is the execution and production and delivery and so forth. And each assignment has their own version and allocation of project points based on the nature of the assignment, degree of difficulty, and so forth. So the beauty of this, again, is that you're not talking hours, you're talking something else. You're talking project points. And project points are as much a manifestation of degree of difficulty as they are of time. And you can actually add all this up and know what your resource requirements are so that you can staff for this client. And it also can suggest or guide your pricing. Some agencies use t-shirt sizes. Have you heard this? Small, medium, large, extra large is another way of assessing degree of difficulty as you move through the phases of work. And then just at pure Agile, if any of you work in Agile sprints, this is the idea of pricing a sprint, not necessarily the hours of the team that's working on the project, but you price the sprint itself. So briefly, the concept of a sprint is the firm taking a piece of work and working on and completing it from start to finish in a specified period of time, normally 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, usually 2 weeks is a sprint. And again, you're going to price that sprint based on how difficult was this, how important, how complex was this, not just how many hours is the team going to spend during the sprint. So different variations on the theme. So if you think about how you are saving for retirement, because you're all putting lots of money away for retirement, right? If you went to your investment advisor and said, I've been thinking, I'd like to put all my money in Bitcoin or gold or fine art or real estate, you're going to get a pushback, aren't you? Your advisor's going to come back and say, I don't think so. Let's do something more like this. Let's diversify your investments so that we have some in high risk, some in medium risk, some in low risk. Because overall, by managing risk and mitigating risk, we're going to get an overall better return for you. Makes sense, right? Most of us do this very thing. Now, what does our pricing portfolio look like inside our agencies? Does it look like this? Is it diversified? Or does it look more like this? And I don't mean a black hole. I mean, it's kind of all one thing for most firms. It's, well, we're taking our hourly rate and billing our client in some form, either as a retainer or actuals, or it's basically one thing. What would happen if our remuneration portfolio was diversified, like your investment portfolio? Would we end the year with a better margin? Answer, sorry for the leading question, but yes, you would. And the agencies that we know and that we work with who achieve these above average margins, this is how they do it. Because they have a little slice. Imagine that pricing stack we just looked at, representing each of those things, representing a slice in that portfolio. So that you have lots of different ways that you're paid by your clients. And by seeing risk not as something to be avoided, but seeing risk as an economic positive, you are able to optimize your returns. Some quick examples of agencies that think this way. Crispin Porter Roguski famously has an equity stake in Method Soap, which is a pretty well-established, successful brand in North America, and that's still paying off for them to this day. They're likely to approach a prospective client by asking the question, what outcomes are you trying to produce, and would you be willing to pay us based on our ability to affect those metrics, as in this example for Domino's Pizza, in which it was quite successful for both agency and client. Anomaly, which I've referenced already, also thinks in this way. They regularly incubate, invest both intellectual and financial capital in brands that they think have potential. But they're also likely to just take projects on this basis as well. When Virgin Atlantic came to them a few years ago with the assignment to redesign the interface on their seat-back entertainment system, when the agency was asked to quote a price, they came back with a pretty interesting answer. They said, how about zero? How about nothing? We won't charge you anything to build this interface. We'll fund the entire development. We'll pay all the out-of-pocket costs. We'll pay all the salaries. You will not see an invoice from us. It'll take us about 9 months. You'll be in the loop. It's your brand. You'll approve everything we do, but we're not going to invoice you at all for this. So you know there's a part 2 coming here. The part 2 is, but when it goes online, when it goes live, we'd like 2% of all the advertising revenues, because they sell digital banner ads on this interface. And at the end of the first year, I talked to the CFO of Anomaly at the time, and he said, yeah, we made about 40% margin on that in year 1. Now, what about year 2? It's kind of a trick question. 100%. Would you like 100% margins? Year 3, it doesn't last forever. You know, eventually it needs to be redesigned. It doesn't go on forever. But for a few years, would you like one of those slices that's labeled 100%? And do you think that might give you a little leeway to be willing to experiment a little more with your pricing stack? That's how it works. That's how it works. Peter Drucker famously said, all profit is derived from risk. All profit is derived from risk. Meaning if you want to make more money, take more risk. That's how it works. Risk as an economic positive, and manage it, right? Manage it. Okay, the third idea I'd like to share with you is really powerful and maybe the easiest thing that I'll be talking about today. And that's this idea of presenting not just a single price, not just a yes or no, not just a take it or leave it, but options. And let me just demonstrate why this is so important by asking if you could tell me how much coffee is in the picture I have on the screen of this cup. How much coffee do you imagine is in that cup? It's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Does this help? Does this help? Yeah, it helps. We now, okay, it's probably the medium, let's see, what is it, grande at a Starbucks. We can take a better guess of what's in that cup. And the principle here is that we as buyers, we need context in order to ascertain value. There's no such thing as absolute value. If there's only one version or one variety of something, particularly in a category where we have no experience or little experience, it's hard for us to judge, is this a good deal or a bad deal? Is this a good price, bad price, good value, poor value? When we put it in context with options, that helps our buyers, our clients decide what they want and what they don't want. But there's an even more interesting aspect to options, which I'll share with you here.
Most coffee shops all over the world will sell you coffee in one of 3 sizes: small, medium, or large. It's probably going to come as no surprise to you if I tell you that the most popular size of coffee anywhere in the world is the medium size of coffee. But here's where it gets interesting. it doesn't matter how much coffee is in that medium cup of coffee. For example, in this scenario, this is probably going to be the most popular cup of coffee. What happens if I remove the largest size and replace that with an even smaller size? It turns out now the new medium cup of coffee will be the most popular cup of coffee.
That's behavioral economics in action, isn't it? We choose the middle option. In professional services, this has actually been studied. We choose the middle option. Your client, a buyer of professional services, will choose the middle option almost 70% of the time, 67 to 70% of the time. What happens when you take your car to be washed on the weekends? What do you see? Is it a single price? No. You want the silver, the gold, the platinum, you want the shiny tires. We always are offered options. You sign up for new software service, a new mobile phone plan, call an Uber, try to sign on the internet on a flight. What do we see? Options. Always, always. Your clients, their products and services, they're always packaged in the form of options. All smart marketers do this. So what do they know that we don't? And why aren't we doing this? Well, I'm here to say we should be doing this. This can have an immediate effect on your ability to sell in an effective, well-priced program to your client. McKinsey teaches options to all their consultants, and they figure that has helped them sell in about 30% more of their programs and recommendations simply by offering a choice of yeses. So what do options look like in our world? I'm going to show you several examples. This is for a web assignment, and you can see option A, B, C, comprehensive redesign, innovate and differentiate the total package. You can see little icons here, rating system, metrics, and a brief explanation of why this option might be a good thing to consider, and then a fixed price for the client to say, okay, great, I think option B would work the best for me. Here's an example from here in the UK for a liquor brand. Again, kind of interesting ways to name these options: core offering, analytics boost, ideation boost. For a clothing brand, also UK, slim fit, classic fit, custom fit. For a brand identity assignment. For experiential marketing. And the icons of the people, by the way, don't represent numbers of people on a team. These are brand ambassadors in a sampling program. Here's one hot off the press, Alexa Skills app. So there's the comprehensive option, balanced option, baseline option, and you can see the variations in what you get and don't get in each of these options. Now, the power here of options is that you're providing your client context in which to see which of these elements they need and don't need, that they want and don't want. And more importantly, and you'll have this experience if you've never done it before, the first time you present options, which I hope you'll do tomorrow morning, and from here on out on everything you ever do, is that it immediately changes the conversation with a client, away from how long is this going to take, how many hours is this going to take, to which of these options you think is going to work best for you. You're now talking about the actual outputs and the actual work itself. You're having the right conversation with the client. Here's another example with a hackathon, a technology hackathon. There's the regular hackathon, the mini, and the maxi. So you really can do it with almost any kind of program or service that you offer in your agency can be turned into options. So how do we configure options? Here's kind of a simple way to think about it. If you think about the various phases of work that might be involved in an assignment, starting with articulation of the objectives and outcomes, insights and strategy. So imagine that each of these options get populated with variations of insight strategy. We're going to do research, not do research. We're going to do qualitative and quantitative, or just qualitative. Those are all variations in the options. The solutions and prototypes, how many versions are we going to show you, how many revisions, creation and development, production deployment, and analysis and optimization. You can see how you can decide what to add or subtract in each of your 3 options as you think through the work that's going to be done. You can also think about all sorts of things that otherwise you might be giving away for free, like the degree of collaboration with other agencies, how fast you need this, speed of production, how much reporting is going to be required. Do you want us to do the digital asset management? Even your contract and payment terms. You want to pay all up front, pay 50-50, pay over 12 months. All of these things can be put in or taken away from options. Okay, one final area I'd like to cover, and that is an economic model that is really interesting, came out of manufacturing, but totally applies to our business, called the smile curve. And it basically argues that in most businesses, you can chart the value, the perceived value to the buyer of what we do as a smile. And that on the tips of the smile are the high value things that we do. So in the initial stages of an engagement, insight, strategy, concepts, problem solving, ideation, very high value, perceived value. Then we go to the dip of the smile, where the work is got a lower perceived value, still important, but isn't seen as valuable. This is the production execution implementation piece, which, as you well know, many clients are now taking in-house or feel like this can be done for less money elsewhere, and so they find other resources for it. This is a lot of price pressure on this. But then our value comes back up on the other end of the smile, doesn't it? As we then engage in measurement and analysis and optimization. So I think it's useful to think about this curve in terms of how we then apply our pricing strategies. Because I believe that we take the smile and turn it into a frown when we price it. We effectively give away, or we certainly underprice and very often give away the front end of the smile curve, don't we? And we underprice and don't really know how to charge adequately for the back end of the smile curve. And then we try to make up for it with the lower value work. In fact, our business strategy is kind of we give away the high value work to get the low value work. It's brilliant. And we should be doing just the opposite. We should be doing just the opposite. Because the lower value work is being seen as so commoditized. So, as I said, our clients are pretty well educated, pretty well armed, pretty well prepared to deal with us on price. And how do we match that in our organizations? We need pricing as a core competency inside agencies. We need, ultimately, not just a chief financial officer, but a chief pricing officer. And we now see examples of some agencies who have such a person, a chief pricing officer. Or a really interesting, useful interim step to that is a concept we call the pricing council. So this is a small interdisciplinary group of senior executives inside the agency who are charged with making pricing a core competency. They're assigned specific areas of responsibility designed to help bring professional pricing to life and institutionalize pricing inside the agency as separate from the costing function. And this team is charged with a very concrete set of initiatives, many of which we've talked about today, changing the language and deciding how to better diversify the pricing portfolio, how we could do more in terms of outcome-based approaches and so forth. So a lot of roll-up-your-sleeves practical work that over time will produce the transformation that we're talking about in terms of pricing inside your firms. So just to wrap up, I think that one useful thing to keep in mind when we walk into a pricing discussion is we've got to take that as an opportunity to change the conversation, to have the right conversation, because when the client walks in, particularly procurement, what do they want to talk about? They want to talk about cost, don't they? And they use the cost word, and they've got their spreadsheets, and they want to see our spreadsheets. They want to have a discussion about cost. That's what buyers do. That's what they learn in procurement school. What do we want to have a discussion about? We want to at least have a discussion about price and not cost. And the price bar is higher than the cost bar because that represents our profit, right? The seller's profit. But I'm going to put up a third bar here, which is what we really want to talk about. We want to talk about the value of what it is we're about to do for that client, which I submit we don't think nearly enough about, and we're not well prepared to come in and present and defend. But notice the value bar is higher than the price bar. What's that? Well, that's an economic concept called the buyer's profit. The buyer's profit. Interesting. So we want our client to earn a profit as well. And economists teach that in a successful economic transaction, both parties should earn a profit. And for us to be deliberate about that and articulate that that's our approach to our clients, that we believe both parties here should earn a profit. So our commitment to you is to deliver more value than we're charging in the form of our price. So that's going to wrap it up for me. I've been up here quite a while. You're hungry. It's lunchtime. Thank you very much.